Relay connection established. Archive access granted. Origin unknown. Verification impossible. Proceeding with recovered transmission. Designation, 9th relay.
Most people think bad decisions feel wrong when you make them. They imagine warning bells, a knot in their stomach, a voice in the back of their mind telling them to stop. The truth is, most bad decisions feel completely harmless. Sometimes they are so small you barely remember making them. That is what happened to me. My name is Jacob Hayes. 3 years ago, I took something from a prayer tree near Bear Butte. I told myself it was just a piece of cloth. I do not think that anymore. I was 34 at the time and working as a wildlife photographer. Most of my year was spent driving from state to state, following migration patterns, photographing landscapes, and selling prints online. I had built a decent following. Not enough to get rich, but enough to keep gas in the truck and food on the table. South Dakota was supposed to be another stop. A week in the Black Hills, a few sunrise shots, maybe some bison if I was lucky, and then I would move on. The first few days were exactly what I wanted. Long drives, empty roads, pine-covered hills rising out of open prairie. Mornings so quiet they felt untouched. I had come for the scenery, and I found plenty of it. What I did not understand then was that some places are not just scenery. The warning came on my 4th day. I stopped at a small gas station outside a town so small I do not remember its name anymore. An older man stood near the coffee station while I paid for fuel. He noticed the camera hanging from my shoulder and asked if I was a photographer. I told him I was. He asked where I was headed, and when I said Bear Butte, his expression changed. It was not fear. It was closer to concern. He took a sip of coffee and said, "If you see prayer ties, leave them be." I gave a small laugh because I thought he was making a joke. "I wasn't planning on stealing decorations," I said. He did not smile. He only looked at me for a moment and said, "Leave what's hanging where it hangs." Then he walked away. That should have been enough. A stranger had warned me, not in a dramatic way, not like some old man in a movie telling travelers not to go down the wrong road. He sounded tired, like he had given that warning before and already knew most people would not listen. By noon, I was on the trail. Bear Butte was beautiful, but there was something different about it. The air felt quieter there, not empty, not dead, just respectful, like even the wind knew to lower its voice. I spent most of the afternoon taking photographs along the trail. Around sunset, I found the tree. At first, I did not understand what I was looking at. Hundreds of small cloth bundles hung from the branches. Some were red, some were yellow, blue, white, and faded colors I could not name anymore. Some looked new. Others had been weathered by sun, rain, and years of wind. The tree stood alone on a small rise overlooking the land below, and in the evening light, it looked almost unreal. I took several photographs. Then I noticed one prayer tie hanging lower than the rest. It was pale blue, faded almost gray, and the knot looked loose. I remember standing there with my hand on my camera strap, staring at it. I do not know why I reached for it. That is the part I have replayed more than any other. There was no good reason. I was not angry. I was not trying to mock anything. I simply wanted it. Maybe I thought it would make an interesting keepsake. Maybe I wanted proof that I had been there. Maybe I was just arrogant enough to believe that because I did not understand something, it could not matter. I untied it and slipped it into my camera bag. Nothing happened. No thunder, no sudden wind, no voice telling me to put it back. The tree remained exactly where it was, the other prayer ties moving gently in the breeze. I hiked back to my truck and drove away, feeling no different than I had before. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then I saw the woman. I was staying in a small rental cabin outside town. It was nearly midnight, and I had gone into the kitchen to make coffee because I was planning to edit photos through the night. When I looked out the window above the sink, I saw her standing beyond the fence line at the edge of the property. She wore a white dress, and her dark hair hung straight down past her shoulders. She was too far away for me to see her face clearly, but I could tell she was standing perfectly still. What bothered me was not that she was there. People wander. People get lost. What bothered me was that she was not looking at me. She was looking at the cabin. I watched her for almost 10 minutes. She never moved. Eventually, I convinced myself she was another tourist, or maybe someone from a nearby property who had gotten turned around in the dark. The next morning, she was gone, and I tried to forget about it. The following night, she was back. This time, she was closer. Not much, maybe 30 yards, but close enough that I knew I was not imagining her. She stood with the same posture, facing the cabin, unmoving beneath the moonlight. I opened the back door and called out to her. She did not answer. She did not turn her head. She did not react at all. After a while, I shut the door and locked it. The third night, she was closer again. The fourth night, closer still. Every evening after sunset, she appeared somewhere beyond the cabin. Every morning, she was gone. I never saw her arrive. I never saw her leave. She never crossed onto the property. She never threatened me. She never spoke. She only stood there, looking at the place where I slept. For almost 2 weeks, I told myself someone was playing a prank. That was the explanation I needed, so that was the explanation I used. On the 13th night, she appeared on the far side of the road. It had rained that afternoon, and the ground around the road was soft with mud. In the morning, there were no footprints, no tire tracks, no sign anyone had stood there at all. That was when I stopped sleeping. I started researching prayer ties. At first, I only wanted some easy explanation I could use to calm myself down. Instead, the more I read, the worse I felt. I learned enough to understand that what I had taken was not a decoration. It was not a souvenir. It was not some random scrap of fabric tied to a branch for tourists to photograph. It meant something. It had been placed there for a reason, and I had removed it because I thought my curiosity mattered more than somebody else's prayer. That was when I remembered the pale blue cloth still sitting inside my camera bag. The moment I touched it again, something settled over me. It was not fear exactly. It was recognition, like I was holding something that knew where it belonged. The next morning, I drove back to Bear Butte. I spent 6 hours searching for the tree. The trail was there. The rise was there. I knew the angle of the light. I knew where I had stood when I took the photographs. But the tree was gone. Not cut down, not damaged. Just gone, as if the trail had never led there at all. I returned twice more that week and found nothing. The woman continued appearing every night, then the prayer ties started showing up. The first was hanging from my rearview mirror. I found it in the morning, a strip of red cloth tied neatly around the stem of the mirror. I threw it away in a gas station trash can 20 miles from the cabin. The next morning it was back. The second appeared inside my camera case. The third was hanging from a coat hook near the front door. Each one looked different colors, different knots, different lengths of cloth. I never saw them appear. I never saw anyone place them there. One morning I found a photograph on my desk. It showed me asleep in bed. The room was dark, except for the light from the window. The woman stood in the corner behind me, her face turned toward the camera. I had never taken that picture. I checked the metadata. It had been captured with my camera at 3:17 in the morning, at the exact time I had been asleep. That was when I decided to leave. I packed before sunrise. I loaded my cameras, my laptop, my clothes, and every piece of equipment I owned into the truck. I left the cabin key on the kitchen counter and started driving east. I did not stop for breakfast. I did not stop for coffee. I did not look in the rearview mirror unless I had to. By nightfall, I found myself turning around. I do not remember deciding to do it. One moment, I was driving away from the Black Hills, and the next, I was heading back toward them. Toward Bear Butte, toward the tree, toward the woman. The road felt inevitable, like water running downhill. I reached the trailhead just before dawn. This time, the path to the tree was easy to find. No searching, no confusion, no wrong turns. The tree stood exactly where I remembered it, covered in prayer ties that moved softly in the morning air. The woman stood beneath the branches. For the first time since this began, she looked directly at me. There was no anger in her face, no hatred, no threat, only sadness. I removed the pale blue prayer tie from my bag. My hands shook as I tied it back onto the branch where I believed it had been. The moment the knot tightened, a breeze moved through the tree. The cloth shifted against my fingers. Nothing else happened. The woman turned and walked into the forest. I followed her. I wish I could say I tried not to, but that would be a lie. I wanted answers. I wanted to know what she was, what I had done, and whether returning the tie had fixed it. The deeper we went, the quieter the woods became. Birdsong faded. The wind disappeared. Even my footsteps sounded distant, as if the forest was swallowing them before they reached my ears. Eventually, she stopped beside a massive pine. She did not turn around when she spoke. What is taken must remain. Then she was gone, not vanished in a flash of light, not swallowed by smoke. She was simply gone, in the way a dream is gone when you wake up and reach for it. I searched for hours and found nothing. By sunset, I made it back to my truck. I drove away feeling relieved, exhausted, and foolishly certain that it was over. The next morning, I noticed a rough patch on my wrist. The skin looked dry and cracked, almost like bark. I told myself it was an allergic reaction from something I had touched in the woods. A few days later, another patch appeared near my elbow, then another across my ribs. The patches spread slowly across my arms, chest, and back. Doctors gave me creams, pills, tests, and confused expressions. None of it helped. My fingertips became numb. Dirt collected beneath my nails no matter how often I washed my hands. Birds stopped fearing me. They would land on the porch rail while I sat outside and watch me like I was part of the landscape. At night, I dreamed of roots moving through soil. I dreamed of rain soaking deep into the earth. I dreamed of standing beneath the prayer tree while seasons changed around me. Months passed, and I stopped living like a person who expected to get better. I stopped answering calls. I stopped posting photographs. I stopped leaving the cabin, except when I had no choice. One morning, I woke up and found leaves growing from my forearm. Actual leaves. Small, green, healthy leaves attached to living wood beneath my skin. That was when I understood. Returning the prayer tie had corrected the mistake, but it had not undone it. The moment I removed it from the tree, something had changed. Some things, once taken, do not simply go back. Some lines, once crossed, do not disappear just because you finally regret crossing them. The last thing I remember clearly is driving back to Bear Butte one final time. I parked near the trailhead, left my keys in the truck, and walked into the trees. Search teams looked for me for 32 days. They searched trails, valleys, ravines, and caves. They found my truck, my camera bag, my wallet, and my keys. They found the rental cabin empty. They found my laptop on the kitchen table with this recording saved on it, but they never found me. Years later, another photographer found the prayer tree. Most visitors never notice anything unusual about it. They see cloth bundles swaying in the wind, leave what they came to leave, and go home. But one section of the trunk stands out if you look at it long enough. The bark twists there in a shape that looks almost human. Not obvious, not enough to prove anything, just enough to make people uncomfortable. It looks like a face with closed eyes, peaceful and half-hidden, as if the tree grew around someone long ago. The photographer took a picture. When he zoomed in later, he noticed 2 words carved into the bark beneath the face. Jacob Hayes. Maybe that is where this story should end. Maybe that is all there is to it. A man made a mistake and paid for it. But I do not think that is the lesson. If you ever find a tree covered in prayer ties, leave what is hanging where it hangs. Some things are not protected by locks, fences, or laws. They are protected by understanding, and if you take something that was never yours, you may find yourself becoming part of the story instead.
Transmission complete. Archive updated. Relay connection terminated. Signal lost.